The first thing that I should say is that Lauren mentioned that I am Joaquin Castro, and I am a U.S. congressman, and I'm also a twin. So some of you may know that back home in San Antonio, I have a twin brother, Julián Castro. So I'm not the mayor of San Antonio. For those of you that watched in September of 2012, I did not give the keynote speak at the Democratic National Convention. That was my brother, Julián. I used to tell people that there were a few ways to tell us apart. There was a quick way and an easy way. The quick way for 5 or 6 years was that my brother was very blessed. He had a wonderful wife, Erica, who's a public school teacher, and a beautiful young daughter, Karina, who's going to turn 5 in March. And so my brother was married and I wasn't. So all you had to do really was look at our hand and you could tell who was who. But last year, believe it or not, I actually convinced somebody to marry me. And so, thank you. We really should give her a round of applause. My wife's name is Anna, and she is from Alton, Texas, a small town in the valley. So I got married, and we also had a daughter, Andrea Elena. And so the long and short of it is, there's only one way to tell my brother and I apart. Fortunately, it's an easy one. I'm a lot better looking than my brother. I'm just kidding. You know, when we think about home, all of us in our minds think of a different thing. Sometimes we think of the physical space that we occupy, whether it's an apartment or a condominium or a house. Some of us think of a neighborhood or a community or a hometown. For me, the place that I call home will always be the place that I grew up, the west side of San Antonio. The reason for that is my family's history in the United States dates back about 90 years or so, when my grandmother, Julián Castro, came here as an orphan with her younger sister. Both my grandmother and her sister came to the United States really not of their choosing, but because their parents had died around the time of the Mexican Revolution, and she had no other choice. The closest relatives that could take her in were not in Mexico, but were in San Antonio. So my grandmother settled in a household of, at different times, 8 or 9 or 10 people on the west side of San Antonio. And like many people in her generation, she never graduated from high school. In fact, she never even finished elementary school. Because she never had a formal education, my grandmother worked her entire adult life, and even before that, as a maid, a babysitter, and a cook, to do every single thing that she could to get by for herself and to give my mom, her only child, a better chance in life. And I share that story with you, not because I think that it's special to my family or that it's unique, but because that is a story that is common to so many of our families. Whether our relatives came here from Mexico or Europe or Asia, wherever it is, many people have come here over the years and found homes. My home, the west side of San Antonio, is a very special place for me. Now, I gotta say, you know, in every town, big or small, there are places that are known as the bad part of town. The part of town that really, if people have a choice, they would rather not live there. They're the parts of town that no realtor, if you asked them to show you, if you were moving to San Antonio and you asked a realtor to show you a house, most of them would never show you the west side of San Antonio. It's a place with crooked houses many times, small houses. A lot of the streets are beaten up. Dogs roam around as packs, you know, walking all over the neighborhood. The schools are not known as the best schools in the city. But if you go inside those little homes and you talk to the people inside, you will find that they are the most sincere, soulful, beautiful people that you will ever meet. Humble, hardworking people, people of faith, who go to work every single day and come back home late at night oftentimes and do it without complaint. I was fortunate to grow up around people who were very appreciative of what they had, who had very little, but often thanked God every night for every single thing that He had given them. That is the kind of place that I remember, and the place that I will always remember, no matter where I go, as my home. So you can imagine, my brother and I, you know, both my parents were the first in their families to go to college. My grandmother, of course, dropped out in elementary school, but she and their family helped put my mom through Catholic school for all 12 years of her life, and then she went to our Laredo University in San Antonio. So she went to college, My dad graduated in the early 1960s from UT Austin. You can imagine how few Latinos were there at UT Austin in the early 1960s. My dad graduated with a math degree. And both my parents worked as hard as they could to give my brother and I every opportunity that we could have. But you can imagine, coming from the west side of San Antonio, what a difference it was when I left in 1992 in the fall to go attend Stanford University. Now, at that point, I'd only been out of San Antonio literally a handful of times. I'd gone to, my dad had taken us to the Grand Canyon once and to California once, and I'd been out for debate tournaments a few times, but that was about it. So in the fall of 1992, my brother and I got on an airplane, and we packed 3 bags each. And this was at a time, of course, before 9/11, where many of you will remember, you could still take all of your family and your friends to board with you at the gate. They could see you off and take pictures and hug you and kiss you. And my brother and I got on the plane, and we cried for an hour straight. Because we were so homesick already, because we'd never been away from home. We got to Stanford University, and those of you that have been on campus or seen the pictures, it's a beautiful, magnificent campus. Something like 6,000 or 8,000 acres, Spanish tile roofs, one of the most beautiful campuses in the United States. But right away, I knew I was in a different place. I got to the registration in California at the time, at Stanford. We were already registering for class by computer. So the first assignment was to go register for class on a computer. And back at Jefferson High School where I went, we had computers, but we didn't have a mouse attached to it. So I got to the computer, and I was supposed to register for my classes. And lo and behold, there was a mouse attached to the computer. And I didn't know how to use it. So I picked up the mouse, and I started rolling the ball. And I rolled the ball, and it would barely move the cursor on the screen. And the girl next to me, who was sitting next to me, she looked over at me kind of strangely. She said, "Oh, I think you got to put it down and move it on the desk." That was the first lesson that I learned at Stanford University. Unfortunately, it would get a little easier from there. But my brother and I had a little bit of a culture shock going out to Stanford. But during our time there, we made incredible friends, stayed there for 4 years, studied communications and political science, and by the end of the 4 years, while Stanford would never be home, it felt very comfortable to us. And we were very blessed to be able to, after that, again, having never seen the other side of the country. I think before I left for Boston in 1997, I had never been east of Houston, Texas. That's the furthest east I had ever been. And so, again, this time, my brother and I were better at packing this time. So instead of 3 bags, we took 2 bags each. And we showed up at Harvard Law School in 1997 with 2 bags each, and we moved into the dorms and stayed there for 3 years from 1997 to 2000, and then graduated and went back to the place that we always loved, the place that we call home in San Antonio. And I share that story with you because I ask you to think about what your hometown means to you and what you can do in the coming years for the place that you call home. And to make sure that you are the person that defines for yourself and for others what it means to be from Laredo, Texas. And that you not let others define for you what your home means. That you define it for yourself and all that it means for you. And as I've gone through the years, I thought about my experiences at both those places and growing up. When I was in college, how many of you have taken AP courses? Took AP courses in college or in high school? When I went to college, I had taken a few AP courses at Jefferson High School, and I think my school offered 3 of them. When I got to college, there were these people that had taken 5 or 6 or 7, and I had a friend that had gone to Torrey Pines High School in San Diego that had taken 12 AP classes and gotten 5s on all of them. And then I was sitting in class one day, a few years later, in law school, and as I was sitting in class, I finally was able to slow down for a minute and reflect on all of the opportunity that I had had to literally be, as one of the few Latinos at 2 of the nation's best universities now for several years. And I was sitting in class one afternoon, and I slowed down for a second, in a way that it's sometimes very hard to do when you're in your early 20s. And I was always in a hurry. My brother and I graduated high school in 3 years. We thought about graduating college in 3 years. We were always in a hurry. And as I sat there, I realized that I was sitting in a room with some of the brightest people from all over the United States and all over the world. And as I listened to these folks speak, I was struck by something that inspired me. It also made me sad, but it inspired me. I realized that the people that were sitting in that classroom with me in Cambridge, Massachusetts, were just like the people I sat in class with at Bexar Middle School and Jefferson High School and Carvajal Elementary. And that if you had put some of my classmates from Jefferson High School in that classroom with us at Harvard Law School, they would have done just as well as I did, or better, and just as well as a lot of the people that were sitting in that classroom with me that day. And so I resolved back then that when I got home, I would do every single thing that I could to build what I call the infrastructure of opportunity in my community and in my hometown. And let me tell you what I mean by that. See, philosophically, I believe that just as there's an infrastructure of transportation, a system of streets and roads and highways that helps each of us get to where we want to go on the road, that the beauty of American society is that together as Americans, we have built up an infrastructure of opportunity that enables each of us to get to where we want to go in life. And that it has to include certain things. Great public schools and universities, a strong healthcare system, so that if you become debilitated or get sick, you don't pass away. And also an economy that's built around well-paying jobs, so when people work, and they work hard, as the people that I grew up with would work hours and hours and hours. My grandmother worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time. When you put in a hard day's work, you can support yourself and your family members. And I noticed that in Texas's history, in our own state, there were these gaps in the infrastructure of opportunity throughout our state. And so, for example, you know that you can't get a medical degree anywhere south of San Antonio in Texas. You can't get a law degree anywhere south of San Antonio in Texas. Until the 1990s, you couldn't get a doctoral degree in the Rio Grande Valley, a place that holds over 1 million people, a place that they call home. And so my challenge to you today, especially to the young people here, is be someone who builds out the infrastructure of opportunity in your hometown and pushes to build out the infrastructure of opportunity in our state and in our nation. That, I think, is one of the highest callings that we can have to help our fellow person and to help our hometowns. And also, as you're going along and making your way, whatever it is that you want to do, whether you want to be an engineer or a doctor or a teacher or a singer or a dancer, whatever it is that you want to do, I realize that throughout the years, some of the toughest challenges you'll face, and one of the toughest adversaries that you can face, is your own mind. We think about the tests that we take, whether it's the SAT or the LSAT if you're going to be a lawyer, or the MCAT if you want to be a doctor, or the GMAT if you're going into business school. Those are all tests that are written on paper or taken on a computer. We have final exams every semester. But some of the toughest tests, some of the toughest challenges you'll face are not on paper. And they're not outside you or beyond you. They are within you. They are with your own mind. Believing whether you are good enough to do something, overcoming self-doubt, believing that you belong. And so what I wish for you, especially for the young people here, is that as you make your way and succeed, that you will do everything that you can to believe in yourself, surround yourself with people that believe in you, and always know that no matter where your talent and where your fortune takes you, whether it's near or far, that you will always have people here in Laredo who love you, who care for you, who are hoping for you, who are cheering for you, and you will always have a place to call home here in Laredo, Texas. Thank you very much.